Good morning, and thank you to everybody for joining
Chip trustee, that's as far as I'm
the
going.
October
Nice.
Ohio One Recovery,
All good.
One Ohio Recovery Foundation board meeting. I'm going to ask Lori to do a roll call.
Director Bruce. Director Amon.
She's here.
She just walked in.
Director Whiston.
Here.
Director Andrew.
Here.
Director Ayers.
Here.
Director Mason.
Here.
Director Mayer.
Here.
Director Powell.
Here.
Director St. John. Director Worsbicky.
Here.
Director Dodge. Director Driehaus.
Here.
Director Hohato.
Here.
Director Tyler Lee. Director Mattia.
Here.
Director Piccirilli.
Here.
Director Greta Johnson.
Here.
Director Silac. Director Gregoire.
Here.
Director Kidd. Director Lee.
Here.
Director White.
Here.
Director Radcliffe. Director Royson. Director Baker. Director Claymeyer.
Here.
Director Terry Johnson. Director Rob Blaisdell.
Here.
And
Good
Director
morning, Director Tyler Lee is here. I'm trying to change my name virtually.
And Director Shylock is here then. All right. I have 21. We have a quorum. Thank you very much. Well, we have a quorum. That's one of the things I always get most excited about, so we can conduct our business. So we've had the agenda submitted to you all electronically. But before we get on with our first order of business, I want to take a moment to welcome to the One Ohio staff team, Mackenzie Betts. She has joined us as the partnership and outreach manager, or should be working with our 19 regional boards. So we'd like to welcome Mackenzie and see you at our next meetings, the various regional meetings. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda, or are there any edits to the agenda? Motion to approve
Moved.
by Keith Hohato, second by Jeanette Wisbicki. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. In your meetings, we have the draft minutes from our September board meeting. And if there are no edits, I'd like to have a motion and a second to approve that.
So moved.
Motion made by Greta Mayer,
Second.
second by Greta Johnson. We got the Gretas. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, and the motion carries. And now we move on to our mission statement, and I'd like to turn over the floor to Director Daphne Ayers to present this month's mission moment segment focused on one of our grantees. Go ahead, Daphne.
Thank you, Don. All right, so I'm excited to share an update with you guys about Road to Hope. On October 1st, I had the opportunity to attend their ribbon cutting. Sarah joined me. It was their grand opening of their newest home, the Trinity House. Oh, yep, there we are at the very left side of that picture, cutting the ribbon. It was a lot of fun. It's recovery housing for women and dependent children. So it has all three levels, if anybody's familiar with housing levels. So 3, 2, and 1, depending on their level of need. It provides safe and modern recovery environment for over 100 women and children. And so we at One Ohio, the foundation, right, provided $650,000 to this. This was our Region 19's biggest grantee for the last year. So in total, we funded 79 recovery focused projects and awarded $14 million in that grant cycle. Just as a kind of side note to this, I had the pleasure of, after cutting that ribbon with Sarah, going back in and looking at pictures of what that spot looked like before they did the renovations. And I ran into a young lady, I'll call her M, and she said, "Miss Daphne, I don't know if you remember me, but I was in your jail." And she said, "I'm going to be the second shift supervisor here." And I thought, wow, like we are making change. So I just wanted to say thank you for all that. I wasn't a part of granting that money, but I was definitely thrilled to be there and be part of this One Ohio. So thank you.
You know, that really focuses on why our work is so important. So thank you very much, Daphne. And best wishes again to the Road of Hope project. Thank you for all they do. I'd like to now turn over to committee reports, and our first committee report will be the Audit and Finance Committee. So I'd like to turn the floor over to the chair, Evan Claymeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first order of business is to approve the August financial report. I will turn it over to Alicia and David to discuss the August financial report. The Audit and Finance Committee did meet prior to this meeting and did approve the financial report and asked the full board to consider approving it as well.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. Just some quick updates on the August financials. If we can go to the next slide. The bottom line is we're spending as expected, for the most part below what we had budgeted, but basically meaning we'll basically focus on the fact that we haven't hired staff. We're kind of below that spending. But we have McKinsey now, and we'll start to pick up. We did provide an offer letter, so we're hopeful that we'll have our finance manager in place here soon, and we have jobs posted. So please let folks know that if they're looking to do grants, this is a great place to work. And so we'll appreciate your support, but we'll see those numbers spend closer to what we expected to spend as we continue our hiring. The other on the cash statement that what we talked about this morning, if you go to the next slide, was the cash balance report, which we talked about the payments from Allergan, Teva, CVS, the distributors, and J&J were received in August. And that extra cash was moved to KeyBank as planned, as we've talked about, as we implement some of our short-term cash strategies. Some funds stay with KeyBank in the treasury account, others go into our new short-term investment accounts. And so we are operating and implementing those plans as we speak. And on the last slide that we talked about with the Audit and Finance Committee, August was a big month for grant payments. So as you may remember, July is our reporting month for the foundation. Once a report is reviewed and approved, we process payments. And so a number of payments went out totaling 1.8 million. You'll see that for the next few months. We'll continue to process those reports. And as they get to kind of that approved status, we will make those payments as needed based on the payment schedule for each grantee. So that is the report. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, Alicia. Any questions on the August financial report? I would entertain a motion to approve our August financials.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the August financials?
So move, Jonathan Lee.
By Jonathan Lee. Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
I've got Tom Winston a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Evan, do you want me to move over to the 2024 audit report then?
Yes, please.
All
I
right,
apologize for doing that out of order.
that's just fine as long as we cover it, right? So now I turn over our 2024 audit report to Heather Dolan. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. In your packet, you have two items. One is spiral bound and one is stapled. We're going to start with the stapled item. This is a required communication to those charged with governance, all of you. We'll jump right into page 1. There were no new accounting policies and practices no controversial or emerging areas that we need to discuss, and that's where we would do that in this report. This report is for a two-way communication. We open that up early on in the audit so that if you need to talk to us for any reason, we're available, and you have my contact information. At the bottom of page 1, the observations about the audit: no disagreements with management, not aware of any consultations, no significant issues arising during the audit. We did not encounter significant difficulties with dealing with management. They were very cooperative. We ask a lot of questions, and we receive a lot of information, and we're able to do our opinion accordingly. We did not encounter any other significant or difficult contentious matters. The next page is page 3, accounting estimates. So there are estimates surrounding revenue recognition, amortization of software,
No, I know, but
and
just
leases
have her
as
there.
well.
All right.
The next page is a couple of very minor audit reports, audit adjustments, sorry. Those surrounded getting things in line for the financial statements, getting things to tie out. One is related to the conversion and getting the net assets tied out for that software conversion, and then an accrual entry. So very minor. Usually I have a lot more entries than that. So kudos to management. Any questions about that? The last document is the representation letter. This is a letter provided to us by management, just saying they've given us everything that we've asked for, which it's 3 pages, so it's a lot of information. Any questions? It's not very exciting, but we don't want it to be, correct? The main event is the audited financial statements. That's your spiral bound copy. We'll go to page 1-1, which is the audit report. We're gonna hone right into paragraph 2. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects. This is the opinion you're looking for. It's a clean opinion, unmodified opinion. Like I said, we do a lot to get to that opinion, so we were able to get there. Statement of financial position is on page 2. So you can see current assets predominantly with cash and cash equivalents, and then current liabilities. So there's a large grants payable. So that's the grants that were approved during that year, and that's what's payable out. So that's 33 million. There's net assets without donor restriction. That does include the interest that's earned off of the cash that's held in the bank. Net assets with donor restriction, that is the settlement. Page 3. The statement of activities is broken down between without donor restriction and the activities with donor restriction as to what came in during that year. Expenses show you program services expenses in comparison to that management in general. Program is at 98% this year. Interest income, you can see there under other income, 7.5 million. The next page, 4-1, is your functional expenses. This further breaks down the program services and management in general into functional and natural class. Statement of cash flow, all of those, that activity is in operations, bringing cash down to that 236,561 and change. We'll skim through note B is your accounting policies. There were no changes there. So if we go directly to note C, that is your liquidity and availability. This is the main one I like to point out. This is what you have available over the next year. A lot of that 41 million will be going out in grants. So those were released from restriction to be released for grant purposes. Any questions? Those were the highlights I wanted to point out. Do we have any questions otherwise? Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Evan, do you want me to call for a motion to approve the 2024 audit report as prepared by SEO Accounting?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
And it has been recommended, by the way, by the Audit and Finance Committee. So is there such a motion?
So moved.
By Jeanette, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
By Denise. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, next item, Evan, is the remarks on the 2026 budget.
Thank you. Over the past 2 months, the Audit and Finance Committee has been working with the One Ohio team on the budget approach for 2026. The committee has reviewed the proposed expenditures and key vendors to ensure strong governance over the budgeting process. We believe the budget reflects the investment that the organization is making in our grant making capabilities, regional capacity building, and the infrastructure required to amplify our impact as we deploy over $90 million through our first 2 grant cycles. The Audit and Finance Committee has also reviewed the budget proposal in comparison to best practices with like foundations and are confident that One Ohio is taking action to prudently manage our resources. The Audit and Finance Committee is coming forward to recommend the proposed 2026 budget and allocations to the board so that we can confidently move forward together and prepare for what will be an essential year for growth for the foundation. First, I will turn it over to Alicia to do some high-level overview of the 2026 budget.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. So what we'll walk through today is the work as Evan described. Would love to have some conversations. So I'll hold some of my remarks to the end and turn it over to David to just talk through the numbers first, and then we can have the conversations at the end if that works for the group.
Sounds good. Then I will, why don't we just go to the next slide then? A few just high level remarks as we get into the 26 budget and the numbers. The first being that the budget is presented with the same focus that we've had for the last 2 years. The 4 areas of regional support, which has been growing, especially through 2025, and you'll see into 2026. The grant support and deploying $90 million across potentially 400 plus projects. And the pursuit of public education initiatives as well. And all of this, of course, requires the continued investment in the management in general, which we've been building up over the last couple of years. And you'll see is, I believe in really good shape going into the 2026 budget. And so, at a very high level, the next slide, I just wanted to talk about the focus of the dollars and where they're going. And I think it's really critical to remember that a big chunk of the budget is dependent on the decisions that were made in 2025. That is in June when we approved the additional positions that the implementation of our evaluation and compliance program, the additional central legalized services to directly support the regions, and a recognition that as we expand the number of projects, that we are talking about regional capacity building in 2026. And so, I'll just note here that a big part of why the budget will be elevated this year is because the 5 positions that were approved in the 2025 June amendment, as well as some others that were approved at the beginning of the year, but were implemented in the middle of the year, will all have a full annualized impact in 2026, meaning they'll be here for the full year. The second piece I'll talk to, and then it looks like we may have a couple hands up, is the term endowment model that we're still pursuing. Is that in this budget, we did not include the investment advisor or the Office of Chief Investment position or implementation because of the potential variability of how those fees would come through and even what they are. We've just started that RFP process. And so that would come back to the board as a future approval that is not included in this budget. Before I get to the numbers and the way that they're presented, it looked like we had a couple of hands up, Alicia. I didn't know if you wanted to entertain those now or at the end of the presentation.
I think they were up by mistake. Can anybody
Okay.
clarify? Did they have a question? Okay, I think you're good, David.
Great. Before we turn to the numbers themselves, I do think it's important for folks to note that we're going to present this budget in the same format that you saw it last year. As we look to the future, we're going to shift some things in the way that we present, and I'll just take a moment to talk about those, but I just want to make sure that folks are aware that we're going to present it just the same way we did last year for consistency's sake. So if we turn to the next slide, which goes through the numbers in the way that it was presented last year, just an explanation of the slide that you're looking at. Across the top, what you are going to see here is the 2025 budget that was approved in June compared to the 2026 budget proposal, the change by dollars and the change by percent. The reason that budget to budget comparison is the appropriate one in this case is when you are in a startup or growth scenario, the intent of the budget may be as important as the next year. So we're talking about what we intended and what we planned versus what we're going to plan next year. The reality is, and Alicia talked to it earlier, that we're spending less this year than the 25 budget, largely because of the timing of personnel items. So what this helps us do is it gives us a little bit more apples to apples comparison for this year. In the future, we expect to change it so that you're looking at a current year forecast as we get ready for next year's budget. And so I just wanted to make folks aware that this was the approach that we had worked on with the Finance and Audit Committee over the last couple of months. Down the left side, you'll see that the management in general budget is broken out by the various statement of activity lines, from personnel and various non-personnel items. And then below the M&G budget, you will see the grant support, regional support, and public education initiative. Well, those three lines are only listed as one line. Each of them consists of the personnel, contract services, et cetera. So each one could have its own broken out statement of activity. For presentation purposes and consistency, this was how it was presented last year. So we just want to make folks aware that all of those elements are also inside each of those budgets. I'll point your attention to the very bottom of the slide, which I think at a high level, talks about going from just under 3 million to about $3.8 million in the total operating budget for the year. Just to have a few talking points around what the drivers are. The first are the 5 positions that we talked about earlier, as well as other mid-year position implementations, which make up the majority of that difference. About $450,000 of the 800 or so thousand change comes from positions, as well as a few positions that are also contemplated in this budget that had not yet been approved. And I want to make very clear that, for things like vendors and for new personnel that was not previously approved, even with the approval of the budget, the Personnel Committee and the Finance and Audit Committee will need to go through their various processes. So, a reminder that this is more like an up to budget because those approvals have not yet happened, but this gives us the bumper lanes and the guidelines from which we can then work on each of those contracts and the personnel decisions that need to support the expanded operations. And so, the jump comes from large part personnel. The second is, budgeted dollars for regional capacity building, which makes up about $350,000 of the difference. And the final $100,000 to $150,000 of difference is made up of vendors and contracts who have been increasing through 24 and 25, and now will be at their full support level in 2026. And again, as a reminder, those are up to amounts. so that negotiations over the coming months, will be prudently managed with professional staff and the Audit and Finance Committee. So I want to be clear that that's going to be the focus following this discussion. So, in all, I just wanted to make sure that folks understood, that the changes as we go through into next year. And, I think the next slide then just collapses it. And then I'll stop after the next slide, by the way, for questions and discussion. And Alicia, hand it back to you. All this does is consolidate that management and general budget. Instead of being a lot of lines, it's one line so that you can see them cleanly next to each other. What I wanted to point out here is that the two areas that are getting almost all of the incremental investment are the grant support system and the regional support areas. These are the grant management and grant associate positions, both pre and post grant award. These are the contract services for regional capacity building and legal services. These are the big investments that we're making. On the other side, there's the management in general, which I mentioned earlier about being prudently managed, that, well, right now it's budgeted at being a $200,000 less than 25. I will remind us of the earlier slide that 130 of that is us not budgeting for the investment advisor. So that unknown is still not in the budget. But even after taking into account, we would be talking about a $60,000 to $70,000 decrease from last year. And that's largely a function of having done a lot of work to get the right infrastructure in place and being able to make prudent decisions about what to continue and potentially what contracts to let go of as we are moving forward into with a stronger infrastructure and position. And so sometimes folks would look at that and say, that's a good thing, we're decreasing our management in general. And others would say, are we investing enough to make sure that we are able to do the other three focus areas as robustly as all of the regions and our state needs to meet our mission? And I think this is an appropriate balance between those two as we look to the future. So, Alicia and or Evan, is there anything that you wanted to add from a high level presentation perspective?
Evan, if I could, I will just jump in and talk a little bit about the background on some of these numbers, and I think it will help answer some questions, perhaps, if you all have any. So I think we have a couple more slides teed up. So we go to the next slide. We continue to remind ourselves as we were building this budget, and in the Audit and Finance Committee, we had a discussion about this mission and vision and how it really continues to drive the decisions that we make, how much we support the grantees, what technical assistance, what evaluation measures that we put in place really hopefully will help us achieve this mission and vision. And so I just wanted to bring this to the forefront because it was an important part of why we decided to do some of the things that we are proposing in the budget. But if you go to the next slide, it was also this recognition of we're a community foundation, and the support that the community foundations provide to the community in large is important. And we talked a lot at the Audit and Finance Committee about what that meant. And so on the next slide, it is a visual description of what that means. And so, while we spend a lot of time focused on, rightfully so, the granting and partnering with our regional partners to do that granting, what our regions and what we're really doing is a lot more than providing dollars. It's really providing technical assistance, is convening and having conversations about the needs and issues. It's capacity building, and it's really providing leadership and putting our expert panel, our experts out in the community, out on the regions to work on our issues together. And so we're really excited. This is a model that came from another foundation that really spoke to us when we were looking at the budget and speaking to those things that don't often show up in the numbers, the work that we do out in the community in partnership with all of you. So with that being said, if you go to the next slide, what you're buying in this budget is important. You're investing in that capacity building and technical support. So really focused on how do we continue to support our regions administratively for those who need it? How do we continue to support our grantees and continue to put the expert panel at the forefront to just continue to refine and make better this process of grant making. I think what stood out to me when the finance folks put the numbers together is that we will have by the end of the year allocated $90 million out into the community. And the work that takes to monitor, manage, and support those programs to be successful is what you're buying through this budget alongside our grant program, and making sure that as we do all of that work, the grant program, that capacity building and technical support, that we maintain our accountability and transparency in that cost to do the number of public meetings that we do. Over 150 in the regions last year. The meetings that y'all have attended throughout the year with us, those have costs, but they're important costs to maintain transparency in the process so that folks feel like they can lean in and know what we're doing with the dollars that were entrusted to us, and weigh in on how those dollars are spent. And so that is just a general overview of the budget. I think that was the last slide, but would love to have a discussion or share any questions about the budget that was presented so far.
Well, I don't see any flags up, or Denise has a question.
Question on one of the line items. So the public education initiative, can you help me better understand what this line item is speaking to?
So in previous years, this line item spoke to things like our partnership with the Nationwide Foundation to do the state fair. And so that is part of why this line item ever existed. In this year coming up, I think what we're thinking about is opportunities for expansion. And I know that those opportunities have not yet revealed themselves, but we are certainly looking to find public-private partnerships or partnerships to look at opportunities to do public education. And so what that looks like is still yet to be seen. But what we would like to do and what I've heard from you all is you want us to explore what that looks like. So for this line item, the way this plays out, this is the time of staff. Right now, this is really the staff time that's built into pursuing any public education initiatives. Any new endeavors would come before the board as a separate or in addition to this budget and would become a budget amendment. So and I don't want to kind of dive too far into what we've talked about at the Audit and Finance Committee. And I don't know, David, if you want to speak to this, but we really are trying to allocate staff time where we're spending it. So that means with the grant support budget, with the regional support and the public education support, we've allocated staff salaries to initiatives or the time that's spent around those. So that is the majority of what you see in this line item, is that recognition that some staff time would go into public education.
I think it's worth noting, I know we're going just a little bit deeper here, that when you looked at the presentation earlier, that every allocation that we made for 2026 for consistent comparison was made in the exact same to the 2025 presentation, so that it was an apples to apples. In that way, we're making sure that the explanation for the change is not we changed the allocation. So it's making sure that it is truly saying if we allocated a person or a contract one way in 26, we present it the same way in 2025. And so that in part is to validate Alicia's comment about the portion of personnel there and the contracts that will, or at least the room for the contracts that will help us to capitalize on the opportunities that she just mentioned a moment ago.
Greg Waugh.
I just wanted to comment on the expansion of the grant support, which David characterized as pre and post. I think that's excellent. I think it's a common model with major funders. And as my members of the grant committee know, the staff put a tremendous amount of effort in helping develop the regions and regions that need it, and develop potential funders, and then we need to support them on the backside. So the kind of meta thing, we're investing money in a lot of important services, but we're also helping places build infrastructure that can continue after. So just very happy to see that.
Thank you. And, oh, Jeanette has a comment or question.
Sure, I agree 100% with Tom. I think the increase in the budgets for grant support and regional support are absolutely crucial to the success of what we do. So I do compliment you. I just have a question that, when we get the reports for, 26, David had mentioned that each of these line items, grant support, regional support, and public education, include the details of personnel and contract services. Can we show those? I think it would be important just, especially for the grant support and regional support, to see how much is staff time and how much is contract.
Alicia, is it okay if I answer that question?
Go ahead.
I'm personally really glad that you asked, because going forward, we are going to present budgets against actuals for each of the 4 areas with their own statement of activity, so that you can view the detail and have a even more transparent and robust discussion for each area. So I really appreciate the question, and we've set up our new accounting system to be able to do that by position, by contract. And so yeah, the answer is a definitive and emphatic yes.
Thank you so much.
And I'll just
Scotty,
amplify, Jeanette, that is the plan for reports moving forward. In fact, David already had the 2026 budget laid out like that, and the Audit and Finance Committee recommendation was to show it the same way we showed the 2025 budget, so it didn't feel like there were too many moving parts. But I'll take the blame there, David. We asked him not to present it that way at this meeting, but moving forward, as we change our accounting system, that is what you will see moving forward.
And again, I really appreciate the increase in the grant support and the regional support, because it's absolutely critical to our organization.
thank you. And Scotty has a comment.
A couple questions. So we have a personnel line, and then we have personnel that sits under other lines. Are some of those people split between those different line items in terms of their hours being built throughout the system? Is that my understanding?
We do have some. Oh, sorry, Alicia, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Apologies.
David, and you can start and I'll finish. I'm sure you'll answer
Okay.
the same way.
Well, yeah, so the answer is yes, we have a few positions that do cross some of these areas as they support multiple parts of the organization. And I'll reiterate that if we made that allocation in 26 in the budget presentation, it was also showed that way in 25. So that just for consistency's sake, but for the purposes of not just internal, but also externally, how we are presenting, knowing A, that this is a public forum, and B, that we need to be accurately presenting to the public, how we are allocating our precious resources, that, every person, how they're allocated and their time is spent needs to be thought through and made sure that they're accurately presented in the financials so that we can make these kinds of decisions. So that's a long way of a yes and, but there's just a handful of positions that have some percentages that are split. Alicia, what would you like to add to that?
I think that answers the question, but just to illuminate it with an example, when we have our grant staff, 100% of them are counted towards the grant program. But groups or folks like Sarah, who float between grant, she oversees the grant staff, she oversees the region staff. We split her time between those different programs based off of that, and we have a record and keep a detailed record of how that's done.
Okay. And then it looks like about $1 million increase year over year. What percentage of that is personnel versus contract? Do we know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the majority of it is going to be in personnel. So you're going to see about 450,000 of that, in personnel. And I guess it's similar between the two, about half and half overall. But if you excluded the regional capacity building element of the contracts and services, it would only be about 100 to 150,000. So 450 in personnel, 350 in budget for capacity building, and another 100 to 150 in potential contract increases. Although I'll remind everyone that the Finance and Audit Committee, even with the approval of this budget, will need to review each of the vendor contracts at certain levels And those are up to amounts that are included here. We hope to come in lower than those dollar amounts.
Yep. So then my last question would be, a couple meetings ago, when we were determining if we were going to have another grant cycle, depending on the methodology the foundation wants to move forward, whether it's investment versus grants or what that looks like. Let's say we don't have a grant cycle next year. What happens to that support staff that's pointed at that activity?
Alicia, is that something you wanted to?
We did
Sorry.
vote for a second grant cycle, so we
I
are.
understand that. I'm saying, but we're bringing people on to support a grant cycle. What if round 3 is not as big or doesn't happen due to investment strategy? I guess is my concern.
Go ahead.
Still be doing post things we've already funded. So I can say that much, and you can
Yeah.
be much more articulate.
So our grant program compliance and evaluation would still need to occur. And so we would be managing, we're estimating 400 contracts that we would manage over the next 3 years. And then if we add that next cycle, it would kind of just continue. So we're estimating at least 250 programs that will be averaging a year to evaluate.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome the senator. So all questions have been asked and comments made then. Is there a motion to approve the 2026 budget and budget allocation as recommended by the Audit Finance Committee?
So moved, Amen.
By Julie makes the motion,
Second.
second by Jeanette. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much, Evan, for all the remarks and support by the committee. We'd like to move on to the executive committee reports then. And for the update, over the last several months, the foundation has been asked to weigh in on several matters of legislation, which has called for the need of policy that details how we'll handle these requests as they come in. In your package, you should have received the draft of the legislative policy we worked with our general counsel and the executive committee to create. And the policy states the One Ohio Recovery Foundation shall limit its legislative, judicial, and regulatory advocacy to those issues that directly impact the foundation's stated mission. Foundation board members and staff shall only engage in advocacy on behalf of the foundation after approval by the board. And all such activities should be in accordance with federal and Ohio law. Board and staff members shall not be prohibited from engaging in advocacy in their own individual capacity or the official capacity to another governmental or non-governmental organization. Board members and staff engage in such activity, such advocacy shall give appropriate consideration to conflicts of interest with their fiduciary duties to the foundation. Did everybody, I know, like I said, we had a committee meeting on this. Is there any need for clarity so you can lobby on behalf of your own organizations and just honestly make it clear that you're there on behalf of your organization? Is what I see coming out of this. So is there a motion to approve the legislative policy?
So moved, Mayor.
By Greta, Mayor, second by Daphne. Any discussion? All in favor say, oh, did I miss something? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to go to the Grant Oversight Committee, and we'll actually hear from Greta Mayer on this instead of Tom Gregoire.
Thanks so much. We had a meeting on September 24th for the Grants Oversight Committee. Do this. We met for the Grants Oversight Committee and agreed to meet 2 more times because our work is nonstop. And we had great discussion, lots of committee member participation. About half of the committee, we heard from Dr. Gretchen Clark-Hammond, who presented on grant cycle number 1, lots of learning from the evaluation team. And I really appreciate what we're doing is learning what we can, both from the region feedback survey, so from our regional partners who reviewed the grants from grant cycle 1, incorporating that feedback as well as from the evaluation team that we're learning from grant cycle 1, as we are at the same time working on grant cycle number 2. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about the RFP coming out. We came to consensus on the last remaining topics, and we're continuing to work to be ready for the next grant cycle, which will include providing feedback on the funding inquiry and application question sets. So that was what we talked about for a long meeting, and we're anticipating 2 more long, intense meetings to get through the work.
Any discussion or questions on the report? I'd like to thank you so much, Greta. I'd like to, at this point in time, turn it over to Alicia. Oh, I'm sorry. There is the investment report. I was looking over here. I have the investment report by Jim White.
Thank you, Don. How could you miss me? Come on.
Because you were standing behind me.
The investment committee report. First off, just wanted to let everybody know that PNC is now managing and really almost done kind of building a portfolio of cash assets for us. I've seen kind of the live portfolio. It looks good. And we actually have, I think we're in the process of scheduling a meeting at the end of this month just to kind of get a further update. So things are really moving along nicely with PNC. The big news is that we have sent out our RFP for an investment advisor. That was actually sent out on September 22nd. We sent it out to 18 firms, and I think we've gotten responses from 17 firms. I'd like to thank the other committee members on the investment committee for your recommendations for potential partners. I kind of took it upon myself to reach out to most of the potential candidates and talked with almost all of them just to give them some information about One Ohio, our expectations, and whether or not they were interested in responding to the RFP. So I think we've had, once again, great success there. We sent it out to 18 firms, and I think we've gotten 17 responses, so all good there.
If I can just make a comment, the firms that I know of appreciate and the time you took, and you took an awful lot of time, the rest of the board should know.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thought it was well worth the effort. So thank you for that, though, Doctor. The deadline for the responses are October 17th. So that's really right around the corner here. And then really the hard work is going to begin for the investment committee in terms of reviewing those RFPs, scoring those RFPs. We've added some additional meetings for the investment committee to review and score those proposals. And I think we would like to have a selection by sometime next meeting, early or the latter part of of this year. And I do want to make a emphasize that the hard work in not only selecting, scoring the investment advisor, but once we get that person on board, the hard work is really gonna start in terms of just developing and helping us update our investment policy and really doing the heavy lifting as it relates to kind of the financial modeling that's going to have to take place with respect to essentially how much can we ultimately spend based upon this kind of term endowment philosophy. So I mean, that will be work that will be top priority once we get that investment advisor in place, is to help us think through that financial modeling and then help us update our investment policy based upon that modeling. And because I know a lot of people are looking for, okay, I know we've got 2 grant cycles approved. What's the third? What's going to be the fourth? And ultimately, what is the organization's spending policy going to be? And once we get that investment advisor in place, that's the work that they will be conducting very early on. So, any questions?
Where can we find a copy of the RFP?
I think the RFP was the RFP, Alicia or Jim, was that in? I saw that somewhere. We can certainly send it out, but I thought it was part of the board packet, if I'm not mistaken.
It is in the board packet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
David,
everyone.
Any more comments or questions with regard to the investment report, comments or questions? Here, thank you very much, Jim. Now I believe I can turn it over to Alicia.
All right. I just have several announcements, no new business, just announcements that I wanted to bring to the floor in terms of our announcements and updates. So the first is a board survey. I want to say I appreciate as much all the time that you all spent in our meetings, one-on-one with me, just trying to sort some of this stuff out. But we wanted to get and capture some of your feedback in a survey. Are we getting you the information you need? Do you feel like you're getting it on time so that we can make improvements for next year, but also schedule for next year? Are the meetings held at the times that work for you? And so can we improve our meeting cadence, our meeting schedule, our meeting frequency to best meet your needs and expectations? So that survey is coming soon. Alongside just some updating your contact information, particularly if you have someone that's supporting your scheduling. It's helpful for us to know that as well. So that is coming soon. The next item in your board packet, we were able to renew our directors and officers insurance policy. So take a look at that. That is your policy that supports the work that you do every day on behalf of the foundation. And so I wanted to make sure that that was more visible to you, that is something that we pride ourselves in making sure that you have the coverage you need moving forward. So we're excited about that. The next item, and special thanks to Tom Gregoire, who is our chair of our grants committee. I know many of us have received from John Hopkins a request to do an interview. And so on behalf of One Ohio, we work with Tom to get that request fulfilled with John Hopkins. You all are still welcome to participate in that survey if you would like, but we wanted to make sure that we at least had someone that participated. And given that they wanted to know where the funds, how we were thinking about the funds, we landed with the grants committee chair as the person that could best speak to some of that and the processes and the thought that's gone into our first cycle and now the second cycle. So feel free to do with that as you wish. If they continue to contact you, you're still welcome to participate, but we check the box from a One Ohio perspective. The next item is more one of housekeeping. You should have received an email from Amy Shadwick around our reimbursement process. We know and understand that this may take a little time on the front end to get set up, and we appreciate feedback. We've already started to hear some feedback, so we're asking questions of our Bill.com system. But I wanted to give a little color as to why this is important to us. For me, in a time where my bank account was just recently hacked, we just are really trying to maintain highest level of security when it comes to when it comes to bank account data. And so right now that process has been handled by staff, and we're trying to limit any points where even with our grantees that we touch bank account data. And so with that being said, we thought a more secure way of doing business as it relates to any reimbursements for you all would be to partner with Bill.com to process any reimbursement payments. Couple notes about Bill.com. They are SOC 2 compliant, which I'm learning as I learn about IT and security, that is where you want to be in terms of strict standards for protecting personal data. And again, we'll reduce those risks associated with staff handling any of your account information personally or having access to that information. Once you put the bank account information into the system, we never see it. No one on our team will have it on their computers. And so that, will add a higher level of security for us and you. All right. And then last but not least, in terms of an announcement, we have started, I hope you've noticed, that we started to put media articles that we feel like are relevant for you to see in the back of your packet. So these aren't just media articles that we've been featured in, but also just good ones that we thought you should be aware of as we do our work. And so I think that there's a few in there I wanted to point out, but also say thank you to Ted St. John and a number of other folks, I think, who have done op-eds in the recent months. We put those copies in there, who have just spoke about One Ohio, especially during Recovery Month and our grant process, just to keep the public aware of the work that we're doing, along with a Washington Post article where we were mentioned. That I think is important that everybody take a good read so you can see the different perspectives that are happening across the country. But importantly, here in Ohio, a grandmother was featured in that article that's from Ohio. And so we were asked to comment on that article as well. So I wanted to make sure I flagged that one for you so that you guys can see what we're being asked and how the rhetoric is still evolving around settlement dollars in general. So I said a lot, but that was the end of the updates that I have for you all today.
Thank you very much, Alicia. We've now completed the board agenda. Is there any new business that has yet to was not placed on the agenda? Hearing none and seeing none, then just a reminder, our next meeting will be virtually on November 12th. November 12th will be a virtual meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? By Keith, second by Julie. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, and the motion carries. Thank you. Travel safely, everyone.